Hello, welcome back to the Natural Fails channel. Today I'm with my good friend Menthu, and we are going to be talking about the classes we are most excited for after they have been remastered in Pathfinder 2nd Edition. Menthu, how about you give a nice hello?
Hello, welcome to the channel.
Yep. All right, so I guess we just jump right into it, huh? So I think how we're going to format it today is that I'm going to give my list. So how we functioned this is that we ranked the classes that we're most excited for. The thing to keep in mind, this isn't a mechanical discussion. It isn't which class is mechanically the strongest. It's just which ones are we the most excited to play with the remaster in mind. I want to preface this that this isn't anything like, oh, the number 8 class I think is bad. You should never play it. That's not true. It's just it's not the class I'm excited to play for. And how we're going to do this, we're going to do my list first, and then at the end of the video, after we've talked about each of the classes based on my list, Menthu is going to share his list and blow my brains away because I guarantee we're going to have very different lists. All right, let's do this. Number 8, I picked the Ranger. I know this is going to be a controversial one for you, Menthu, but the Ranger, unfortunately, just even pre-remaster, I wasn't very excited for it. Just not a class I was excited to play. I feel like it's one that I see everyone else play, and I'm just like, I want to play something else. On top of that, I didn't see many differences outside of them changing the focus points and the new crossbow feats. So, how about you, Minthu? How'd you feel about this class?
Okay, so I think the main focus is the crossbow feats, and I think there's going to be possibly more in Core 2. But there's more crossbow feats. There's a better crossbow that is a martial weapon now,
Yes,
which is just,
the Arbalist, Arbalist? I don't know how you
yeah, the
pronounce that, but yeah,
arbalist.
Arbalist. That's it. Yeah.
Yeah. The new crossbow ace as well is essentially just going to turn the ranger into almost a gunslinger when it comes to crossbows.
Yeah,
You can just do so much more.
it does make me wonder because I don't remember, and I don't have my copy of Guns and Gears open, but I feel like the Gunslinger also got crossbow A. So I wonder if this feat is also changed for the Gunslinger.
Yeah, I would think so. But they already have a lot of reload mechanic stuff that they are wanting to get anyway. So
Hmm.
a lot of that stuff already transferred over to crossbows, but now the ranger actually has some better options, but we'll see.
Yeah, they're getting a little slice of that reload pie. All right. Well, I agree with that. Is there anything else you want to add on to that? Or are we good to move on to number 7?
Big highlight I think for in order to help teamworks especially is that there was actually a buff to one of their I think it's a level 9 class feature called Nature's Edge. Essentially just letting them be able to target enemies that are in difficult terrain as if they are flat-footed. Now,
Oh, you know what? I do remember that. That was a really cool change. And if I remember correctly, the you now just ignore difficult terrain, which
no,
is
no, no, no.
is it
So
is
this
is it
is
not that you do that?
so no, that's a different one. That's Wild Stride. I think that's a level 11 feature. This is basically you just instead of it having to be natural difficult terrain where enemies are just flat-footed, but now it's what's it called now?
Off guard.
Off guard. That's it. I'll get used to it.
Yeah, it will get there one day. Yeah, and I see it. It's called Unimpeded Journey. I'm looking at it. That is the 11th level feature. Yeah, and I think it is very interesting that they have made Rogue sort of the natural, just being able to take advantage of rough terrain, especially at higher levels, since you start to get to ignore it. People are flat footed to you while they're in it, or off guard. Oops, I did it too. But I think it's a very interesting niche that this class did not have before that I don't think any other class really gets. So that is exciting. I don't think that changes where I have ranked it, but again, that's just more of the flavor of the class for me. It's just not something I'm excited about inherently.
They also get the spellcasting proficiency buff, so now they just become master in spellcasting proficiency.
Yes, that is nice that they've done that. And I also noticed that they also gave spellcasters' class DCs. That's something I sort of underlooked in the last video. I didn't really notice it, but it's very interesting how they're being a little bit more open to the idea of giving class DCs to casters and spell casting to marshals, which is very interesting.
Yeah, it makes free archetype way more interesting.
Oh, yes, it does. Well, let's go ahead. I think we're good to move on to number 7.
Yes, sir.
Number 7, I picked the rogue. So the rogue, I think the rogue is mechanically still as strong as it always has been. There's been some buffs for the rackets in particular. One of my favorite buffs that the rackets got was the scoundrel, where they can now, after fainting, they get to step as a free action, which is really cool. You know, you can feint, step maybe to get yourself into, a flanking position with an ally, set them up without using or wasting any of your action economy. And it doesn't say you need to succeed on that feint either. So if you, for example, did not successfully feint, you can still move out of the way. Especially when you keep in mind that step can ignore attack of opportunity in case something goes wrong and you're like, I need to beat a hasty retreat.
Yeah, that specifically for the scoundrel is incredibly strong, it feels like.
Yeah.
You just can do so much because of it. You can maneuver around better and you can get out of danger way easier. Especially if you're already going for something like a general feat where you what is it, feather step?
I
Where
think
you
it's feather
just
step.
step twice.
Yeah. I wonder if that stacks. I don't.
I don't think it stacks, but you could then just use 2 actions to do 3 steps and feint if you need to. So
Yeah. So I
it's just
I
a lot.
really like that, and ruffians are indirectly benefited by the fact that now rogues get all weapon proficiency. They're no longer tied down to the OGL sort of, these are your rogue martial weapons and they can't use anything else. Now you can have a rogue using all sorts of weird little pole arms and stuff, and I think the ruffian gets a little bonus from that.
Yeah, so for martial and advanced weapons, as long as the damage die size is d6 or less, you can still use your extra damage die.
Yeah, which is a really nice benefit, especially given that it basically gives the ruffian this wide range of different things to play. So yeah, I mean, I think the rogue is in a very good place after the remaster. Not that they weren't before. However, there was one thing that I noticed that sort of hampered my excitement for this class. They took out the arcane trickster. I don't know where he's gone. I don't know where they put my boy, but there's no longer a spell casting rogue, which I thought was very interesting after they made Ranger more of a spell casting class. That rogue being able to opt into that, they took it away. So I don't know what or how they're going to implement that back, or if that's just going to be sort of left behind. But even the feats that used to, you know, go along with that magic rogue, it's just gone.
I bet they're changing a lot of the spell casting archetypes, especially since with the Eldritch Trickster, it needs to be an archetype that has expert and master spell casting proficiency options. So I bet
Mhm.
they're going to be reworking how those work in Core 2.
Hopefully. And this does bring up a question about Core 2 that I really want to hear what Paizo has to say. What's going to be included in that book? My initial impression was that there was going to be nothing that any of these classes that were in Core 1 were really going to be, we weren't going to get any new fighter feats. We're not going to get any new wizard feats. We're not going to get any new rogue things. That's what I thought was happening. But I see a lot of people pointing out there's a lot of things missing. Rogues not, or not rogues, rangers not getting their snares. Obviously, one of the rogues rackets are just gone. So it makes me wonder and question, are there going to be more things in Player Core 2 that isn't just those 8 classes? And that's a discussion we're going to have to wait to have, because we're going to have to wait for Paizo to communicate with us about that.
Yeah, not only that, there might be brand new content that heavily changes the game by the time we get around to Core 2. So they might be leaving very specific things out for that reason.
Yeah. So I think it's something we're going to have to wait and see a little bit further with how the remaster shakes up. But that's where I'm at with Rogue. I think largely besides some buff to rackets and there's some feats that I think got a little changed. I think they're mostly exactly the same, and rogues are going to be just as fun as they were before. It's just one of those things where I have other classes I'm more excited to play than a rogue. I don't know what else to say. That's just where I'm at with it. Well, with that, how about we move on to number 6? For number 6 for me, I picked the Druid. The Druid class. Everyone loves a good nature-based uh, spellcaster. Uh, the big reason why I put Druid in 6 is because, one, this is, again, a personal opinion. This is not anything to comment on the Druid's overall power. I'm just not the biggest. I'm not always interested in the thematics of a Druid. I will say, though, I am excited for the Storm Druid with the focus point change in particular, them being able to spam their focus spell, that is going to be very nice for any or for any druid who's going to be able to do Tempest Surge reliably multiple times per combat.
Yeah, just all the improvements to focus spells is really going to be helping Druid a lot. And then there's also quite a few new feats for
Yes.
every like path of Druid that you want to play. So that just seems like Druid just overall got more options to be more fun. Now you also don't have to worry about metal.
Oh yeah, that makes a whole lot of sense when we consider the fact that Paizo has made metal an actual element. So it is nice that you don't have to, ask your DM, can I make sure I'm wearing wooden armor or leather armor or something, or my wooden shields? You can now play around with those metal options. And I'm very excited to see some druid orders that deal with metal and wood. I don't think I mean, I guess we sort of have one with wood, with the plant. We don't have a metal druid, and I would like to see that
Yeah.
happen.
I think we might be getting that in Core 2, in all honesty. Especially if we're going to be getting some crafting rules, some
Oh,
crafting update
yeah.
stuff. So that might end up tying into metal a bit more. So
Yeah.
we'll see.
Yeah, we'll have to see, but I definitely do think the druid is benefited mostly by just getting new feats, like you said earlier, those order specific feats. It's really nice to get that kind of stuff. Well, with that, let's go ahead and talk about number 5. This one is going to be pretty short because nothing really changed for this class. But we're going to be talking about the fighter. I put fighter as number 5, mostly because there is a specific build of fighter that I really want to play that was already legal in pre-remaster. So the fighter sort of got to hold on a little bit higher than some of these other classes that didn't really get changed, just because I'm more excited to play the aid reaction fighter, and which actually, funny enough, got indirectly buffed by some systematic changes. Aid is now technically a flat DC 15 check instead of DC 20. Again, your GM can modify that depending on whatever they decide. I do wish there was a little guidance on how to modify that feature, but it is what it is. And I think overall, the fighter was the class that did not really get changed outside of overhauling certain systematic changes, such as disarm, reposition, getting rid of the open trait. So, Menthu, any thoughts you want to add to the fighter?
No, that pretty much sums it up. There's a lot of value being gained with reposition and disarm and aid. Especially if you have another marshal that's going to be with you. If you get assurance with athletics, or if your ally gets assurance with athletics and you are constantly aiding each other in order to, improve your success chances, you're gonna be dealing with a lot of like single target enemies that
Oh yeah.
just completely gone. Not only that, though, fighters getting a ton of new feats, which is just helping everything.
Yeah, I was actually really surprised fighters got as many new feats as they did, considering they already had one of the highest feat counts. Paizo just said, "Why not more? Why not more?"
Yeah, they added quite a few, and then they buffed a lot of the existing ones too, specifically ones regarding maneuvers like disarm and reposition and that sort of thing to be a little
Yes.
bit more inclusive.
Yeah, and I really like that. And I hope this is sort of leaning into this idea of fighters not being a damage, like solely damage class, but leaning into this idea of being a master of the battlefield, being able to bully your foes into submission, not only by hitting them really hard, but by grabbing them, shoving them, pushing them, repositioning them, taking their weapons away from them. And I really like this particular iteration of fighter and sort of where they are leaning and opening up the fighter. So if you're not interested in just doing damage, you can just be a support fighter, and I think that's a really cool dynamic that I think Paizo has perfectly crafted here. Really in the original core rule book, but has been refined to something very interesting here in the remaster. All right, so let's go ahead and move on to number 4. Everyone's little problematic child, the wizard. So, wizard being number 4, I'm gonna be honest, I know on the, subreddit, the Pathfinder 2nd edition community as a whole have been, not happy with some of the changes to the wizard, but I'm going to say this in my personal opinion, I love the flavor of the schools. I think I honestly, this I went from not really wanting to play a wizard to now being like, I wouldn't mind rocking up with a wizard. I really like the arcane schools and how they have given it this thematic flair and given themselves the license to be able to more freely make more. How do you feel about this, Menthu?
So I'm gonna be completely honest. I've not been in the subreddit where they're talking about wizard stuff. That's not what I've seen. But uh, I don't really care much for the new schools. To be completely honest, what I really appreciate from the wizard though is the fact that you can make your own school, which for anyone who loves making complicated and interesting backstories for their character, that is a completely new way to mechanically change your character completely based off of your backstory.
Yeah.
So you can do a lot of like backstory inspired stuff within your character class that's just completely built in. So
Yeah.
I really like that.
I'm gonna say I 100% agree. I wish, however, there was a little bit more guidance, especially for things like school spells, since I guess you could steal from like domain spells for focus points, but you would that's the one thing you would have to actually sit down and homebrew. And since we don't have any rules for making spells, that's the one thing that I feel like is holding back. And I'm keeping my fingers crossed that maybe at some point Paizo will give us some sort of, and I know they've gone on record and said they don't really want to do this, but I hope they give us some rules for like making our own spells, right? Just a guide for DMs who want to homebrew. But I do think if you sit down and you sort of just compare what the focus points can do, or the other focus spells can do, you can probably come up with some very interesting things. And I know that I am looking forward because I know Paizo's going to do it. I know they're going to do it. I believe in my heart of hearts they're going to make a time wizard. And once they do, oh boy, I am going to be so there.
Yeah, that'll be pretty cool. I think the only thing that was missing from Wizard that I wish that they did more with was maybe either adding thesis options or making some of the current thesis options a little more interesting. I guess I'm not satisfied with those in
Yeah.
particular. They're cool on their own, but some of them just feel incredibly simple, I guess.
Yeah,
Which isn't necessarily a bad thing because there's already a ton of mechanics to work with, but yeah.
the way that I think of it is that the thesis and the schools are basically you combine them to make your own quote unquote subclass.
Yeah.
but I do feel like some of them are mechanically not interesting. Shout out improved familiar attunement. I don't know why you would ever want to take this when you could just play a witch. Which is disappointing, but I get it. Witch needs to have their niche, but there's just no reason to ever want to take improved familiar attunement.
Yeah.
And I think that sucks. But something like spell substitution being super, super powerful is something that, I wish some of the other not as fleshed out or mechanically interesting theses were sort of improved, but I'm keeping my fingers crossed that now that arcane schools can be made, Paizo is going to give a little bit extra love to the thesis, since they're going to be hopefully looking at Wizard as a whole and thinking, how can we add more options to this class? So I'm keeping my fingers crossed that we're going to see a little bit more love to our favorite spellcasters here. All right, so number 3, it's the Bard. So the Bard is high up, despite, I'm going to be honest, this is going to be super, super, super just favoritism right here. Bard is at number 3 just because of the Warrior Muse improvements. I'm going to be 100% honest. The Bard is basically exactly the same, except for a very few new interesting feats, an improvement to the Warrior Muse, and just some renaming of things to make all of the Bard focus cantrips or composition cantrips. I can't talk, and making them more music themed. So the warrior buff or the warrior bard muse that I'm particularly interested in is the level 1 feat they get for selecting that muse called martial performance. When, if you hit another creature with a strike, your composition cantrips can be extended by a turn, which is just super cool. And then something like emotional push, a level 2 feat. An enemy you're aware of fails its save against an emotion spell. You're prepared to take advantage of your enemy's sudden change in emotion. The target is off guard against your next attack before the end of your turn. I'm just seeing a very fun gameplay loop here with the warrior bard that simply was not there before. And for someone who loves gishes, I am so excited to try out a warrior bard and feel good about playing it. How about you, Menthu? Any thoughts on the bard class?
Not any particular ones that you didn't just say. I mean, the Warrior Muse with that new level 1 feat that you get automatically. There's just so much more you can do with the class. Like, that's just a complete. I don't want to say it's completely different from how you would play the Warrior Muse prior, but it does feel like you just have better tools to do that thing.
Yeah.
Your niche is now suddenly being filled far better. And not only that, there's way more feats that like give you more support tools as a bard, which the bard is already like an amazing support class
Yeah.
without the new feats and new tools.
Agreed. And it's crazy to me that before this remaster, the warrior bard was considered very bad. Was like basically, I know a lot of conversations said it was a trap option. I honestly felt like it was that was a bit of hyperbole, but I think just that one small change has made the warrior muse go from, well, this might be a little underpowered compared to the other options, to now it is perfectly a valid choice. It is just as strong as the other ones. If you want to play that bard who's got some armor on, has a sword, and is getting up and singing in your enemies' faces.
Oh, not only that, now any bard of any muse can use martial weapons.
Oh,
So
yes.
that
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 change
just
as
gives
well.
so many options that just you would not ever have had before. That also means that if you really want to as a bard, you can now use the arbalist as your crossbow of choice.
I mean, hey, go for it, bards. I am going to say this: the bard has gotten the smallest amount of changes, probably up there with the fighter, but the changes that they did get were fantastic on probably already one of the best support classes in the game. So I think the bard. I'm just excited to play one, man. I'm just really pumped to play one. All right. For number 2, we are going to be talking about the cleric. Yeah, cleric got a lot of tender love and care here, especially the war priest. I remember very distinctly how people would talk about the war priest being sort of this just a waste of time because you could play a cloister cleric, take one of the armor sentinel dedication, and then suddenly you have just as good armor as a war priest, and you still get legendary proficiency in spellcasting, right? So your war priest was just losing out on a higher spell proficiency just to get armor that the that your cloister cleric could get on its own. But now they have given War Priest so many cool new feats that really play into this idea of being in the front lines, casting spells, and healing your allies. Particularly the new feats, restorative strike. I am just, oh man, that is a fun feat. So Menthu, how are you feeling about the cleric here?
I think one of the biggest things that has completely changed the cleric class as a whole is the step away from using charisma for those extra spell
Ah,
slots
yes.
for your font spells. That also has helped the war priest in a lot of ways, just because you now can actually build your character for doing the thing you wanted to do and not having to put 2 or 3 stat points into charisma.
Yeah, that is a another massive change. That divine font was always made you feel really bad that you had basically made the cleric a mad class and the war priest needing, strength, wisdom, charisma, probably a good bit of constitution if you could sneak it in there. Now suddenly you can't really you don't have any stat points to play with here. And I know it became best practice to just dump wisdom entirely in favor of just making sure you had those extra heal spells, since your wisdom didn't need to be high for that. But I
Yep.
agree with you that that divine font switch, man, that feels so good.
Not only that, the cleric is also benefiting heavily from spirit damage change and the holy and unholy sanctification rules, which
Yes.
brings a lot of flavor, a lot of buffs in some ways. Spirit damage overall, I'm in love with that change. It just makes so many of the spells and mechanics, even on monsters, the creatures that you're fighting, it's just way more interesting. And you get to do more things, and your enemies get to do more things.
Yeah, nothing feels worse than having this big, massive damage spell as a cleric, and you're like, I've been saving this all day. I'm about to drop it on this enemy, and then you say, all right, I'm going to roll all this good damage, and the DM just looks at you and says, this is a neutral creature. It doesn't do anything. I'm with you there. I love the spirit damage. I think the sanctification was a fantastic idea by Paizo, allowing you to just sort of get this trait that makes you more deadly to unholy creatures, but makes unholy creatures more deadly against you. I really like that trade off, and I really like that flavor of now also sort of leading into this priest who doesn't want to get involved in this holy unholy war. You're just doing your thing. Shout out to any Gorum lovers, just being able to go, I don't care about whatever unholy or holy things going on. I'm just here for a fight. Yeah, so I think cleric went from me having pretty much no interest in ever playing it to now being probably the second class. Like I definitely really want to roll up a cleric and just channel some smites.
So that then leaves only one class to
Oh,
choose
I
from for what could
wonder
be your number
which
one.
one I picked.
Hmm.
I wonder. Number one, the witch. I'm going to say this. I am biased. Witch, when the advanced player guide was announced, was the class I was the most excited for. My first real character who got to sit through a long form Pathfinder 2nd Edition campaign was a witch. Witch has a special place in my heart. However, the problem pre-remaster, you always ended up asking this question, why play a witch when you could just play a wizard? The familiars didn't do a lot, outside of being excellent scouts. I would still argue that familiars had this great out of combat utility. However, in combat, that's where witches started to feel a little bit bad, with their hexes also giving immunities to all your monsters, and that doesn't feel bad. If you fail your cool little hex cantrip, now you can't use that on that enemy again. However, Witch has gotten the most updates out of all of the class here to give it more of an identity. Now your familiar has something it can do in combat. So every time you cast a hex, your familiar gives a little extra effect, whether it be giving rough terrain or even increasing a negative conditions duration by a round, which is absolutely crazy. The Resentment Witch is going to be a new contender for being one of the strongest subclasses in the game, I think, just based on that one ability alone. But it's not only the familiars getting this more in combat utility through giving rider effects that makes this interesting. It's the fact that these rider effects usually have a small range. So that means the witch went from a class that didn't really have to think much about its turn to now you need to sit there and you need to think. You have so many decisions to make, so many different things to do. Do I move my familiar more into combat so I can target the big boss, right? Hit him with one of my rider effects? Or do I pull my familiar out? Or do I just let my familiar just do whatever it is, just let it stand there while I use my 3 actions for maybe a big spell that will be useful here? And that is so much fun. And the fact that anticipating that this could be a source of frustration, the witches now get a new hex called Patron's Puppet that for a free action and a focus point, your familiar will just go do something. So it can be extremely useful using that hex to get your familiar into position and still have your 3 action. I love complex action economy. I love this kind of thing. The Witch has gotten me so excited, and that's not even talking about all the new feats it got. Ceremonial knife. Now you just get to make a knife a wand. And you can overcharge that wand, get a second casting out of it. If it breaks your knife, that's 2 silver pieces. Who cares? Go buy a new one tomorrow. It's all right. The broom feat, you can just get a broom. You get the what I like to call the familiar ability feats, where it gives your familiar a 2 action thing that it can do in combat, usually harming an enemy, particularly Spirit Familiar and Stitch Familiar being some of the earliest ones you can get at level 8. Man, the remastered Witch took a class that was unfortunately underperforming and gave it such great flavor, gave it such a great role, and gave it something unique that no other class had, which was the witch's biggest falling, was that it just felt like a wizard, but a little bit worse. I don't know what I don't know. I know I talked a lot, Menthu. Do you have anything to add to my little rant about how awesome the witch is?
No, I was having a good time listening to it. That was great. No, I don't really have anything to add. It's just I keep going back to the player core and looking at the different witch patrons, and I just keep thinking to myself, wow, you could really play an entirely different spellcaster with basically every single one of these patrons, and it would feel, at least for the most part, pretty fresh.
Yeah.
Like, some of the patrons are just, they just do one thing, and it's so good that you can't help but thinking, wow, why are they sure?
Especially the resentment. Man,
Especially resentment.
that's gonna make Slow such a boss killer. They succeed on it, you're like, all right, there's I take 2 actions from them.
It's just, it's so much. You just get so much utility out of it. Not only that, there's some of the other ones that are like not even that specifically good. It's just generally helpful. and can
Yes.
be incredibly useful. Like, I'm looking at Starless Shadow right now. I'm literally
Mhm.
looking at the document, and I'm just looking at Starless Shadow. I'm thinking, there is so much you can do with Starless Shadow to where you can constantly have an enemy just frightened one for basically the entire fight.
Yes.
Like, especially depending on how they roll certain saves, they could just be incapacitated for the entire fight. It's just like, okay, I've dealt with this side enemy. Let's deal with the big bad. Or all right, I've made the big bad far weaker, and just having a bad time overall. Let's kick him while it's down.
Yeah. I have to say, the witch, I think, gives me a lot of hope for some of the other classes that were underperforming, specifically the alchemist. When Player Core 2 comes around, if they give the alchemist as much love and care as they did to this witch, the alchemist will go from probably the worst class in the game, at least the worst feeling to play, into something awesome. And I am so excited. Basically, the witch has gotten me excited for those changes in Player Core 2. Now, what we've all been waiting for, Menthu, how about you tell us a little bit about your list? Run
Okay.
through them a little quick.
So, which do you want the order? Do you want the same order, 8 to 1, or do you want 1 to 8?
Let's start from the bottom.
Okay. All right. So, I think this is probably the one that is the most different from your list.
Okay.
Because at number 8, I have the wizard.
The wizard. Uh-oh.
That was your number 4, correct?
That was my number 4.
Yeah. Sorry.
I mean, it's okay. Again, I've already seen a lot of this sort of being disappointed with the wizard, and I do think I can see it. I can see what's going on. I can see people not liking the new schools. Forgot to mention this, but I also wish the wizard got something to let them steal a little bit of stuff from other schools, like what the bard and the druid can do. I don't know why the wizard doesn't have a way to like pluck like a focus spell from another school, but that's fair. All right, how about number 7 though? I'm interested to hear what's going on there.
Number 7, I think it's funny because it's exactly the same as yours, Rogue.
Oh, the rogue. Yeah, the rogue just didn't get a lot of new stuff. I mean, it's still a strong class,
That's
but
how I feel about the wizard is the thing. I feel like the rogue and wizard, I put them at the bottom. I just barely put the rogue over the wizard because it definitely had new stuff and I've been wanting to play a ruffian rogue, so I put it over the wizard.
mhm.
But with the wizard, it's just things change. The base mechanics of the class change, but the way you play the wizard really didn't change almost at all. Like you're still doing the exact same stuff in your turns. It's not like your play style really changed all that much.
Yeah, I think that's very understandable. All right. How about number 6?
Number 6, I can't remember where you put this class, but I have the ranger
The
at number
ranger.
6.
That was my number 8.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, I remember. So, I have a little bit of ranger bias as I am currently playing a ranger.
Yes, you
Uh,
are.
I think the buff to Nature's Edge being able to any enemy in difficult terrain be not flat-footed, not
Off guard.
flat-footed, off guard. Any enemy that's in difficult terrain, instead of it being an enemy in natural difficult terrain or natural greater difficult terrain, any of that, just having it be any type of difficult terrain is amazing. Not only that, you can now archetype or um you can have spellcasting proficiency that's scaling. So you
Yeah,
can just do way more things.
that is very nice.
There's just entirely new builds for the ranger, especially if you're playing for your archetype. You can just have a fun little time.
Yeah, I don't disagree.
And now there's a very viable way to use crossbows that's not with the gunslinger.
I think that is a nice change. How about number 5?
Number 5, I have druid. I was bouncing ranger and druid back and forth quite a bit. I really like just how much new stuff the druid can do. They have just plain got more things to work with. They have more new toys. You basically just do the same things you were doing before, a little better or with a little bit more diversity. So you just have a bit more freedom when playing a druid, which I think is very important. Not only that, the focus spells being kind of reworked and changed has helped the druid a lot. So I think just overall, the druid is a much better time than the ranger, rogue, or wizard, in my opinion, after all these changes, but not anything too specific to say.
Yeah. Okay. How about number 4?
So number 4 and 3, I feel bad for doing this because number 4 I have bard and number 3 I have fighter.
Okay.
So I really love the bard changes, and being able to do so much more with warrior muse, along with being able to use martial weapons when you choose any muse, is just flat out amazing. You can just do plain way more things with the bard. It's overall great. However, the fighter got a ton of new feats. They buffed a bunch of existing feats for the fighter, and disarm buff has been great. Reposition is great. There's just so many things you can do with the fighter. It's like, why would I not want to play this class? This class can do it all.
I know. I do love that, especially when you come from D&D 5th edition. You're just so used to the fighter being, it's okay. It's all right. But in in Pathfinder 2nd edition, man, the fighter just feels good.
It's just so satisfying. It's almost impossible to mess up with the fighter.
It
You're almost never wasting actions.
I do think the fighter is probably one of the simplest classes, and who knows, maybe we'll have a video out about how it feels to play a fighter eventually here in the future. But
No, I don't think so.
we don't. Oh yeah, that's not going to happen. Never mind.
Yeah, no.
No, 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 no.
Nope,
That's not
veto.
going to happen. No, 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 no.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right. How about number 2?
All right, number 2. I'm so sorry.
Uh-oh.
The witch is my number 2.
Dang. I was hoping for witch sweep. All right.
No, witch is not sweeping. Cleric is sweeping for me. Sorry. But basically everything you said with the witch, it's just absolutely outstanding. Taking a class that was overall underwhelming and honestly very hard for new players to get into. It was very tough learning how to do a witch properly. But I just think the changes made to cleric, a class that most people, especially if they played D&D 5e, are already familiar with. If they were ever transferring over to Pathfinder 2e, or if they were learning Pathfinder 2e for the first time as their first TTRPG, you just have so much more freedom, and there's way fewer traps with the cleric, which makes it so much more exciting to play overall, no matter who you are. It literally does not matter what kind of player you are or like what your background is with TTRPGs. Clerics are flat out better for everyone, and they're easier to use.
Yeah. I mean, I can agree with that. I mean, I do think it's interesting. We both picked the same 2 classes in our 2 top slots. I think that's very interesting.
Yeah, it's kind of self-evident when you look at just how many changes were made with both of those classes. They really took a lot of time and effort and they just sunk it all into cleric and witch, it felt like.
Yeah.
They gave some love to bard and fighter and druid. And they spent a lot of time with wizard, I bet, but I still don't like the changes, so I'm gonna be a salty Susan about it.
All right. Well, I'll counteract that because I really like the wizard changes. I think there's some things that could be a little ironed out with curriculum spells, but you could talk to your GM about it. It says it in the book, and
Yep.
it is what it is. All right. Well, with that, thank you everyone for watching and listening to us 2 nerds talking about this great tabletop role-playing system that we thoroughly love. We are looking forward to making more content, so if you don't want to miss that, hit that subscribe button. Think about leaving us a like and comment. What's your list? What class? What got your number 1? What class are you the most excited to play now that the remaster rules are finally in our hands? And with that, we'll see you next time. Avoid those natural ones.
Bye.